Hey, it's Pops. School Spirits is this young adult show over on Paramount Plus, and I've been reviewing it, and I'm having a pretty good time. Now, not as good as Wednesday, but still entertaining. Really, other than just random cursing, which they didn't need, but they do because I think that's how everybody talks. Uh, Very clean and appropriate for kids and young adults or whatever. I have no real objection to that. Premise of the film: girl gets murdered. When you're murdered on school property, you're trapped in sort of a purgatory there. They haven't really established exactly what needs to happen for you to move on beyond that purgatory, but it does happen. And this character, Maddie, played by Peyton List from Cobra Kai, she's trying to figure out who murdered her. And if her and her friend, who had this very close connection, he's obviously attracted to her. But if someone died in a room in the school, when they're there together in that room, he can actually see her and vice versa, which is unheard of to the other ghosts who also inhabit the school. So that's the entire premise of the show. We're now on episode 6. And where we are in the show is that they basically are doing sort of a law and order approach to things. Like each week, a character is presumed to be the murderer. We go through a sequence of events, either in that episode or possibly 2 episodes, sometimes with a cliffhanger and a tease, and then it's kind of cast aside and that's not that person. Let's move on. So we've gone through the boyfriend, right? The boyfriend was cheating, hence the reason he was using the phone. He was doing different things. Then it went to one of the school teachers that Maddie liked. Well, come to find out, he was stealing money through this uniform scheme that he had going on with one of the extracurricular activities, right? Then you went to the girl that the boyfriend was cheating with, right? You thought, well, maybe she's doing something, right? So you have all these different elements. The most recent thing is the janitor because they found a crowbar with blood on it. He's the one who would have had access. He's like a gentle giant from little innuendos that they pick up. So none of that's really going to stick. So you know that everything is just going to kind of keep moving, right? Now, episode 6 centers around basically a homecoming dance. And of all the characters, Wally, who's a ghost football player who died in the 80s during a game, tragically died. And last episode or episode before, there's been moments where we really get Wally's backstory, how his mom still goes to games. The dad can't handle it anymore. And Wally came to grip with the fact that he can't do this all for his mom. He can't just do things for his mom. And Maddie agreed to be his date. And then in with the current earthly humans, the teenagers that are still there, Maddie has schemed that the boyfriend is going to ask the girl that he was cheating to go to homecoming because they think she's a suspect. Of course, none of this is playing the way you think it's going to play. Of course, you go through this nice sequence, but basically, Maddie is kind of a witch in this episode because she's treating poor Wally badly, who just wants to have a good time. And there's just silly, fun dance sequences and those kinds of things. That's pretty much like some of the best parts of it is all of that. You have another story with the mom because the mom is really still tragically clinging on to hope. She's abandoned her alcoholism. There's different scenes where she's connecting with one of Maddie's friends, Nicole, who plays a very key role in this episode. And that's kind of coming to a head to the point where when they find the crowbar, and that's where we pick up Sandra, that's the mom, is that it's like her hope is gone. The hope of Maddie being alive is gone. She's dead, right? So she starts to fall back into her alcoholism and the drinking and all of that come into play. And everything else is been very good. The performances, I think, are very, very strong. And in episode 7, which is actually like 6 is almost like a filler episode with the dance. It is actually okay. And they do kind of like, I'm glad they didn't like, we didn't have to have a whole episode of spinner wheels on Claire, the girl that's being she's like a cheerleader girl because she's just such an unlikable character. I don't want to spend more time around her and getting to know her. She was dispatched as a suspect, but now she's part of the quote Scooby Doo gang, which actually is a comment in the show, which made me laugh because that is actually how they behave. It's like the Scooby Doo gang who can skirt police rules, who can not get arrested for interfering with an investigation, all sorts of things, right? Well, at the end of the last episode, you have Nicole who's digging in the woods, kind of where this crowbar is. And you don't know what's going on. So now she's a suspect. She's acting very, very strange. All right. Well, the entire show is centered around like who's the suspect and why. So Nicole is the one here this time. Now, what I thought was interesting in this episode, I don't know if anybody else is catching things like this, but they have ghost therapy, right? So ghost therapy is about, being content by being stuck in purgatory. And then maybe there are avenues and things they can talk through and figure out a way to, quote, move on. They haven't explored move on. We had a character that was talked about moving on. And in this episode, we have Maddie trying different things. So we have another ghost who sort of her stories expand. Her name is Dawn, and she's like the hippie weird girl. She believes in seances and things like that. It was played very badly for jokes. Like they couldn't find sage, so they get like a Brussels sprout, so it stinks. And they'll look up at the sky, the stars, and it's like there's mold on the ceiling. So it's pretty rare in the show that their efforts at comedy miss this badly, but it really, really did. It really missed badly. Now, when Dawn tries to have this seance for Maddie, she kind of does like the lead by example thing, and she ends up going through a story about herself and what happens. And what was weird is it ends with her kind of being like, I wish it had been them and not me. They're talking bad about her. She sees it. And then at the last second, they notice her. So she's trying to turn the light off. And when she does, she electrocutes and kills herself. That's what happens. But she moves on, and there's like a flickering of the lights and all these things that happen. And you're like, okay, wait, that implies maybe she had gone to a heaven, not the other direction. It got very muddled in this episode, but at least they're trying to get more on the nose with what actually is going to happen. Now, okay, Paramount is terrible about copyright because I would probably pull up this scene where Simon is actually talking to Maddie because she sees him basically sandbag an interview with the college. They were both going to go away to the same college. He obviously has the hots for her, but he's just a friend. He's in the friend zone. He sandbags it all because she's passed away. So when they have this scene, he basically just says, I love you. And I don't want to go. None of it means anything. He's not been able to grieve because he can communicate with her, and he's trapped in this investigation. And she kind of calls him out and says, well, at some point, school's going to end. You might be able to leave the school sooner than me. And I'm like, whoa, that was heavy. Simon's performance is fantastic in this episode. He's been good. He's probably the best actor through the whole show as far as performances go and things of that nature. I mean, obviously, he gets some of the best material to work with. So I'm not sure that that's totally like, I'm not trying to diss on anybody else or anything like that, but his performance in this episode is fantastic. And I will say Peyton List does a really great job as this type of character, this conflicted character. She's kind of witchy, but never too much. She does a really good job. Like it all plays pretty well. But then we get to another weirdness in the story. And I'm going to maybe have a spoiler alert here too, if you don't want too much. Mr. Martin is this guy that's holding these ghost therapy sessions. And he's like this older guy. And he gets kind of nasty with the one ghost about what she's doing or whatever. And I'm like, who are you? Who are you the one to call all these shots and whatever? And why are you doing all this? Like it's never really clear. So I'm waiting for the episode that we're going to have relatively soon about his backstory and what happened and figure out if he has some sort of connection to something else that might matter because it doesn't feel right. And I don't know if you're supposed to pick up on that or not, but I did. At least that's how I feel. All right. So I said this has some of the best moments and the worst moments in the show so far, and it couldn't be more true. I mentioned Simon. The performance is fantastic. I thought it was truly great, right? I mentioned some of the jokes aren't working, right? Some of the jokes just aren't landing. Some of those things are bad. Well, the Scooby-Doo gang is still trying to research things. And there's this photo and it points to Nicole and all that. And all that's fine. But while they're trying to navigate through their scheme of sneaking into the evidence room in the police station, I kid you not, that's their plan. Cheerleader girl is involved. So later in the episode, the sheriff confronts the boyfriend. That's actually his son. And the girl Claire overhears this, and then she steps in to kind of like cut it off to kind of help the boy, and then just starts woman-splaining, teenage splain this cop, and it was so cringy, awful. It was like you're a bully and you're intimidating people, and I'm like, listen, lady, this writer, so this writer has very little experience. She has experience writing shows that I've never heard of, which I guess are fine because this is a YA show. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in YA shows, so I shouldn't say inexperience. But I feel like she doesn't have the kind of life experience, or why does she think that this would be believable in our world? Like, it just totally took me out of the moment. It took me out of the show feeling like something kind of a cool supernatural take on a real thing. Like, I can believe in the school and these students, and everything felt real. Obviously, we're dealing with like a supernatural concept, but that moment, that scene, it was just like, no, no, get out of my, get out of my face kind of stuff. I just hated all of that. So it twists and turns. I will say, of all of the, I don't want to say alibis, but sort of the escape clauses of why a character is not the murderer. Again, heavy, heavy spoilers. Nicole's is possibly the best. Like, she has, um, like, friend envy has been kind of mocked for like copying her, like liking certain things, dressing the way, all the kinds of things. Like, this is very, very common in high school. And she come up with a scheme for this videotape of Claire and that teacher. So it was proof of the blackmail thing. And then she was going to take this money so she could be part of this move to the school where Simon and Maddie were going to go. And that's what was buried in the woods, that they go try to dig it up and it's not there anymore. And simultaneous to that, we see a little snippet of some money with the mom, and Maddie's like concerned that the mom can be involved, which I thought was a very abrupt turn of events to try to get the mom as the next suspect of the week. It shouldn't be the mom. It would make very little sense for it to be the mom. I don't think any of us want it to be the mom. So don't make it the mom, people. I don't know how many episodes we have left. This is through episode 7. So there's probably 1 more, 2 more, 3 more. Not very many, but there's some. And I know it's not a show for everyone, but at least it is an entertaining show. It's the kind of thing I think you could probably have on and not have to like be glued to. You know what I mean? Shows that can be decent and you can watch and have an enjoyable experience, but you don't have to be like glued to every detail or anything. Like, you can kind of follow. So it kind of fits. It checks that box for me. And it is, like I said, there's some language, but there's everything else is fine. And I do enjoy some of the concepts that's being presented in the show. I do like that. So that's my take on it. Some of you have been watching. I'd love to hear from you what you guys think of this episode. Other shows you can recommend, because this show's going to wrap soon. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So you guys tell me. I'm Pops.